Welcome back. Silver and Black today, an Audacy original podcast covering your Las Vegas Raiders. If you subscribe to the show, thank you. If you don't, please do that for us. Turn on the auto download, and we would appreciate a big show today. I bring in my co-host. That, of course, is Mo Moten, national NFL writer for Bleacher Report. And we are going to talk with one of our favorite guests here. One of your favorite guests, too, Mo. We're going to bring on Brian Baldinger here in a sec, get into some draft talk.
Absolutely excited about that. He had a short clip earlier that I wanted to ask him about that Raider fans aren't going to be happy about, but I'm going to ask it anyway because we ask the hard questions on this show.
We sure do. All right, so let's get to it. Joining us now in what is a busy 2-week period, been a busy month, is, of course, Brian Baldinger. By the way, Raider Nation, you have to know that Audacy is doing something special for the NFL draft. Brian, Baldy, and Jason LaCanfora hosting the 2023 Audacy NFL Draft Show live. You can join them the first night as they talk to local experts and Audacy podcast hosts across the country. I'll be joining them in the first round when the Raiders pick, so make sure you do that with instant analysis. Can't wait to do that as well. We'll see if they stick at 7 or move down. That'll be one of the questions for today. Leading up to the draft, check out Baldy's podcast. If you don't already subscribe to it, you are missing out. That is The Huddle, for his expert prospect breakdowns, which has been great too. The draft show starts Thursday, April 27th, 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. You can listen on the free Audacy app and watch on the Audacy Sports YouTube page. Baldy, thanks so much for being back with us. Know how busy you are. We're excited to get into this with you.
Yeah, me too. Look, these things are good for me too, because I don't know, like all of us, none of us really know what's going to happen a week from Thursday, April 27th. It used to be that you had certain leaks, you had certain places you could go to get some information that you could then, extrapolate. Well, like everybody's just so airtight now. Like I don't even try. Like, and if I hear something, I don't really care. Like I'll just wait till next Thursday night. But look, I mean, this is a great time of the year for fans, for teams, to build your team, to get yourself on a playoff. It just takes a great draft sometimes to just turn your fortunes around. You look at Kansas City in the draft they had last year, 6 players were playing on defense, 4 were starting, and they won a Super Bowl. They wouldn't have won that Super Bowl without the draft they had a year ago.
Yeah, really remarkable stuff. And it's crazy. Mo and I are in this spot right now too, where it's like, all right, let's just get on with this thing, right? All this, to your point about guessing, none of us know anything. We make our best educated guesses on stuff, but really until the reality strikes, we don't know what's going to happen. But let's jump into this right away too. We talked to you last time about the Raiders and you agreed with us, which is, hey, listen, they got to build in the trenches. They got to build that offensive line. We like Jermaine Illuminor, what he's done. That offensive line got sneaky efficient as the year went on, but they do need more there. The defensive line, they need help in the middle to go with Max Crosby. They could use some more help on the edge. But Baldy, we keep hearing that the Raiders may trade up in this draft. Do you really believe that with all the needs that they have in those trenches and on the entire defense, that they may consider that? I don't see any of these quarterbacks as so elite that you want to trade up, but I'm not Dave Ziegler. He might be in love with one of those guys. Tell us what you think at this point in time, a week out, what you think about the Raiders and what they may do in round 1.
Well, I don't know what they're going to do. I find it bizarre that you would go sign Jimmy Garoppolo and Brian Hoyer, 2 guys they know very well from their time in New England, and go and draft another quarterback. I mean, I just don't understand. I don't know why you would give up draft capital on a team that is so need of players. And then I also think this, guys, like this just me, just my respect for Al Davis, his flame burns inside of Allegiant Stadium. Like there's a guy in this draft at number 7 that if there's one player in this whole draft that's a Raider, it's Devin Witherspoon. And it's a position of need. Like Al Davis, like if he saw Devin Witherspoon play today, like there would be no, let's trade up. Let's get a quarterback in the future. And he'd go, give me Witherspoon. He's a Raider. Like, I still think you got to think that way because that's how the fans think. And I know you can't play and placate the fans. But, like, I'm still believing in Al Davis. Let's intimidate people. Let's knock them into the middle of next week. Let's win physically. Like, I believe, let's win with speed. Like, I believe in those tenements that Al Davis built championship teams with.
It's funny you say that, Baldy, because last week we had a question in our mailbag that said, who's the most Raider prospect in this draft? And I said Devin Witherspoon. My only fear is that the Detroit Lions may now take him because they traded Jeff Okudah to the Atlanta Falcons, and they need some help on the back end. And if you remember Dan Campbell's intro press conference, he talked about biting kneecaps and being physical. And I think Devin Witherspoon also fits the Lions and what they do in being a physical football team. So, but other than that, with the quarterback position now, as Scott said, a lot of rumors flying. So you don't think they're going to take a quarterback or trade up for one, I should say. I don't think they're trading up for a quarterback. But I've seen a lot of mock drafts that connect them to Peter Skoronski out of Northwestern. And that's kind of a lukewarm pick for me because I do like Illuminar. I do like what the offensive line did. Do you think that's far-fetched? Because I did see your clip saying that there could be a run on offensive linemen. Would you be surprised if the Raiders started that run on offensive linemen?
Well, I think that'd be the very first lineman that would be taken. Detroit's not taking one. Seattle took two, and they both started last year. I mean, you just go through this. Like, Arizona's not with the defensive help they need and what's out there. Like, I think it's the first spot where you could say, okay, this could be a lineman taken. Now, pick your choice. Like, I love Darnell Wright. He's my favorite. But Skoronski, Paris Johnson, Roderick Jones. I mean, you go through the list of guys. Like, it seems a little high in this draft. I don't see Trent Williams in this draft. I don't see Rashawn Slater in this draft. I see some good guys. And so at 7 right now, Mo, like, I feel like they can, but they just did re-sign Alex Barr and Illuminar. They did have Josh Jacobs leading the league in rushing. They must have been doing something right up front with that group. It's not like Derek Carr was living on his car every Sunday. He wasn't. But, look, I never think it's a bad thing to take an offensive lineman in the first round if you think there's value there. I just think there's better players at number 7 if the Raiders just stay put than an offensive lineman.
Baldy, when you see this situation the Raiders need players. They need young players fiscally, right, to get all those players on a contract, a rookie contract, and of course they need help everywhere. Possibilities, again, we could talk about possibilities of trading down and acquiring more picks, which I think might be smart. They could still stay high in the first round if somebody's after a quarterback, if somebody's after a position player, or if you're in the top 10 with the needs they have, do you stick there?
Well, they have a lot of picks. I mean, they've got 2 3s, they've got 3 5s. I mean, they've got picks. Like, you can only draft so many rookies, I mean, like 12 would be the max. You got to sign them all. Then you got to find a way to play them to see what they could do. So I don't know that getting extra picks, I mean, 2 third-round picks is really valuable in this draft. Having a second. Now, if you want to do something with your second round, like, I just think, I guess if somebody was just clamoring, like just like Chicago got one player in Carolina to go from 9 to 1, and look what they got. I mean, they got a true bounty. It was a great deal, but it was a good draft for that. If somehow, like, you got to be – I'm going to see Dave on the clock now too, because this thing might go, when a team is on the clock. If we start seeing Anthony Richardson go early, like, teams could be making a call to Dave going, look, we want that 7th pick. We want to take, CJ. We want to take Will, whatever. Like, all right, be ready to dance. Like, it might just be that kind of draft, but, hopefully, and I'm sure they're doing all these, just the way we're doing some mock stuff. Like, I'm sure they're going through all their different scenarios. Like, it wears staffs out, but you've got to go through it because you never know what might happen. Anthony Richardson is a total wild card in this whole thing. And somebody might just say, boy, if he's there and he hasn't been taken, the Raiders are on the clock, let's call Dave and see what he's thinking. You got to take the call.
So by the sounds of it in our conversation, we're both on board with Devin Witherspoon. If he's on the board at 7, you definitely take him for the back end of that defense. Do you have any other prospects that you have that are favored to you for the Raiders at 7? And what are your thoughts on Jalen Carter? Because a lot of Raider fans are saying you take Jalen Carter if he's on the board, despite all the things that he's been through this offseason.
Well, here'd be a comp for me. I mean, just last week, Jeffrey Simmons from Tennessee got a $100 million contract from the Titans, and he earned it. Like, he's a dominant defensive tackle. I mean, in the likes of Chris Jones and Javon Hargrave. I mean, he got his payday. All right. And Tennessee has been one of the most dominant defensive lines over the last 4 years, every year. To me, Jalen Carter is a bigger and more athletic Jeffrey Simmons. So I can't imagine Max Crosby not literally jumping for joy. Like if Jalen Carter would somehow be there at 7. Like you can't pass him up. Look what they have in the middle of their defense. Like start building your defense. They haven't been able to build it in a decade, but they got to start building down the center. I can't imagine a better prospect than Jalen Carter to start to build your defense if he was around somehow at number 7.
Now, we talked about, obviously, Witherspoon up front, and an amazing player, would be a game changer for the Raiders. The Raiders also need more. They need more defensive back help as well. Not a great safety draft, Baldy, but at cornerback, you're going to be able to get good cornerbacks in the 3rd round, maybe even the 4th round. Talk about that depth. I see them going multiple picks at the position, maybe even 3.
Well, right now I think Duke Shelley, who they picked up from Minnesota in free agency, might be starting. Well, I'm just going to watch Duke against the New York Giants in a playoff game. I mean, like he's not going to – Brandon Facian was a special team player, for a long time with the Chargers. It's kind of what he is. Like they need an elite corner. They need somebody that can step in. Like Amik Robertson's been a good player in the nickel, and, Hobbs has been a good, tough kid. You like him. But they need a starting corner. And this is a draft, like you say, that you could get a starting corner. It's not just, Deontay Banks and Joey Porter Jr. I mean, this thing goes deep. And so, Mekhi Blackman from USC, I don't know. I watched that kid play. Like, he looks pretty good to me.
Yeah.
I don't know. You get him in the 3rd round, 5th round. I mean, but he looks like he can line up and play. He's got all all the requisite skills that you need. But I mean, I could go through the list of, a half a dozen guys that might be there, in one of those 3rd round picks.
Now, we talked a lot about the 1st round, and I think the Raiders can snag a linebacker in the 2nd round. Some of the top names, Drew Sanders, Jack Campbell, Trenton Simpson out of Clemson. Do you have a favorite of the linebacker position? Because I think when you revamp a defense, and you talked about Jalen Carter, I think one of the important parts of a revamped defense is to have that middle linebacker, that quarterback of your defense that can get guys lined up and make plays. Do you have a favorite of that position for the Raiders on day 2?
Mo, how many middle linebackers have the Raiders gone through in the last 5 years? Honestly,
I can't even count.
You just get lost. Like it's crazy. Some teams have lined up the same middle linebacker. Like Devin White's lined up every game for the last 3-4 years. But go to New Orleans. Like these teams just line up the same middle line. Like you got to get it right. So look, Trenton Simpson is a guy that can flat out. I mean, he's a 3-year starter at Clemson. I think he runs in the 4.4s, maybe even faster. Like he looks like it's not a great draft for off the ball inside linebackers, but Drew Sanders was an elite prospect coming out, going to Alabama, played, put up over 100 tackles at Arkansas this year. Both those guys, Simpson and Sanders, they both can run and chase. The question you have about a lot of these guys, not just these two, but a lot of these guys is, can any of them thump? Can any of them, go up and take on Trey Smith in Kansas City and go put Creed Humphrey on his Humphrey? Like, can any of these, because they haven't done that really in college. And so that's the question that a lot of these guys have when you evaluate them. You can put a clock on them. Yeah, they can run sideline to sideline. That's good. But, sometimes you just got to bring something to the party, and you don't have to do that in college. It's not the way the game is played.
Well, Baldy, listen, I know it's going to be a great and busy week for you, and nobody does it better as far as talking football. We certainly appreciate you putting a tie on for us tonight. I know it wasn't for us. It was for TV, but we're going to say it anyway. But thanks for doing it. Also, reminder, you can catch Brian and Jason LaCanfora on the draft show, the Audacy Draft Show, live on Thursday night, the 27th. I'll be there for the 7th pick. We'll see if they keep it there. But you can catch that on the Audacy app and also on the Audacy YouTube page. Brian, as always, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it. Good being with you, man. Have a great week. We all look forward to a week from Thursday, man. It's going to be fun.
Absolutely. All right. There you go, Brian Baldinger. Such a great guest, Mo. We love having him on. The fans out there love him. Raider Nation, who doesn't care a lot for national pundits overall. We know why. But he's one of those guys. He always tells it like it is, and he's always shown a lot of love for Max Crosby because Max deserves it.
Yeah, I think the big thing there was, and I meant to bring this up to Baldy, is that if the Rays would have drafted Jalen Carter, they do have Max Crosby, who's been through some things in his life. He can kind of take him under his wing. Chandler Jones has, been in this league for a while. He had some off the field issues a while ago. So I think those two guys, if they're going to draft a Jalen Carter and they feel like they can put him under some guys that can help him mature, those would be the two guys you can put him. And defensive line room, same position group. So you can kind of hang around those two older veterans and kind of, again, get his maturity up and stay out of trouble.
Absolutely. All right. We're going to take our break. When we come back, we're going to talk about Josh Jacobs. Yes, we talked about him last show, but now he didn't come in for workouts. We're going to bring that up a little bit. A lot of concern among Raider Nation. I think we're going to reiterate what we said last week. We'll talk a little bit about that. And then, of course, in our final segment, we're going to get to the mailbag again. Questions from email, questions from Twitter, all going to be here with you on Silver and Black today. Which you can also hear, by the way. I want to say hello to our listeners on the Bet in Las Vegas, and of course to all our podcast listeners and our good friends on YouTube. All right, we're going to step aside. When we come back, more Raiders football. This is Silver and Black today. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. It is Silver and Black today, round 2 for this show. For those of you listening to us, we are an Audacy original podcast. If you subscribe to the show already, you are the best people in the world. And we thank you for that. If you don't subscribe to the show, make sure you do and put on the auto download. That way you don't miss us. If you watch us on YouTube, hit subscription, but also hit the notifications bell. And again, a hello to our listening audience on the radio. That's right. On the Bet in Las Vegas, our Audacy radio station in the home of the Raiders. We appreciate you guys listening to us there as well. This is Scott Gulbransen. I'm your host, along with my partner, Mo Moton. He is a national NFL writer at Bleacher Report. Follow him at Mo Moton on Twitter, Moemoton. I am at LV Gully. The show is SNB Today. Okay, Mo, let's wrap up a little bit talking to Baldy. I like what he said. I really, more and more each passing hour, I believe the Raiders will go defense. And I do think they will stay at 7. I think the fact that you can get a Witherspoon, or if Carter fell to 7, I know that's a polarizing pick with some folks. Either one of those guys is a game changer in my book. And yes, it's not a quarterback, but that's okay. I think what they can do is really start to bolster that defense. You start to make everybody feel a lot better about what this team can be. So Baldy's feedback on that, I agree 100%, and I'm more convinced it's going to happen.
Baldy's on board the Devin Witherspoon train, which made me smile because I've been talking Devin Witherspoon now for 2-3 weeks on every show that I go on. Bleach Report live shows, other podcasts. I always say my number one option at 7, unless miraculously, CJ Stroud or Bryce Young are there at 7, they're not. It's got to be Devin Witherspoon, and he even said it. He's one of the most Raider prospects out there. So I kind of nailed Annie's question that she sent last week, which
you said he was a dog. He was a guy that fits well with that Raider team.
He's absolutely that guy. You just watch a couple of games, you'll see it right away. But as I said to Baldy, my only worry is that the Lions may swipe it, because I did my Bleacher Report live mock draft on Tuesday, and that's exactly what happened. My guy Ray at Bleacher Report snagged Devin Witherspoon before I got on the clock. So then I took Christian Gonzalez. Yes, he took Devin Witherspoon for Detroit Lions. And he explained exactly what I explained to Baldy, is that after you traded Jeff Okudah, who was the number 3 overall pick in his class, you're probably going to go cornerback, and the Lions are probably going to pick either Witherspoon or Gonzalez. My BR colleague took Witherspoon, so I took Gonzalez. I wouldn't call it a consolation prize. I would call it 1A and 1B. I like Joey Porter Jr. more than most, but at 7, that's too high for me, for my liking. If the Raiders really like a Joey Porter Jr., I would take him. I would try to trade down to maybe 11 where the Titans are. But if I stick at 7, I can't find a trade dance partner. I do take Christian Gonzalez if Witherspoon is not available.
Yes, and so it was good to hear him say that, because I think he would be a perfect fit for that. And it's one of those situations where I think if you get the opportunity to move down, like he said, you have to have a big bounty to do it, but I just don't think they will. The other thing, I didn't get a chance to ask him, Mo, but I know you've been saying it for the last couple of shows that I like Hendon Hooker. I think they could maybe get Hendon Hooker in the 2nd or 3rd round. I think he might fall. I know he's kind of been on the ups and people have been coming up on him. But I'm telling you, they could do that, especially if they get the guy they really want defensively at 7 and he's still there in the second round. I'm just saying, man. I'm just saying.
But just remember what Baldy also said. He said you sign Jimmy Garoppolo. You have
True.
Brian Hoyer there, who I don't think is going to play unless emergency situations. But I think signing Jimmy Garoppolo kind of takes the pressure off the Raiders to be aggressive at getting a quarterback. Now, I don't think they're going to trade up unless they absolutely like the guy that's available at 2 or 3. Let's say the Texans move out of the second spot, and let's say Bryce Young is available. But I think the Texans would take Bryce Young if he was there. So it would be C.J. Stroud, if anything, if the Texans are going to move back. That's the only situation where I would move up for a quarterback if I'm the Raiders at 7. But the Hendon Hooker, you know how I feel about Hendon Hooker. And I think when it comes down to quarterbacks with you and I think you're way lower on Anthony Richardson than I am, and I'm way lower on Hendon Hooker than you are, because I have questions about how offensively he transitions from that Tennessee offense to the NFL. So I just have questions about the player in general. But I get the value of a quarterback and getting a quarterback. You won't get that fifth-year option if you get him in the second round. But if he doesn't play much, then he will probably accept a modest deal, being that he could be the guy after Jimmy Garoppolo. So I understand that dynamic in that situation at the quarterback position for the Raiders if they were to draft Hendon Hooker in the second round.
Yes. Now let's get to players on the Raiders roster. We talked about last show on Tuesday. We talked about Josh Jacobs, and you and I said, hey, look, no hurry, doesn't have to sign. They had broken off contract negotiations to focus on the draft, right thing for the team. You and I said, there's no hurry, July 15th. Now, a lot of fans, and actually it wasn't written in an alarmist fashion by Vinny and the RJ or any of the beat writers who talked about Josh Jacobs not coming in for the voluntary workouts. There's a reason. And when you're a guy that's getting ready to sign, and by the way, all the big names that have been tagged this year have not signed yet. There's no hurry for them to sign. Yes, they're not going to the voluntary workouts, but Mo, when you're on a situation when you're going to get tagged, because you don't come in for the voluntary workouts, you need to think from a business perspective, especially if there's a chance you may have a contract before July 15th. And so if the Raiders come back to the table with him, he's taking a pause just like they're taking a pause. I'm not mad at Josh Jacobs for doing it. I don't blame him. If I was his agent, I would tell him to do the same thing.
Look, as you said, the main thing here is there's really no rush. I mean, Josh Jacobs basically stayed away from the team last offseason. He comes in, runs for 1,653 yards and 12 touchdowns. So I'm not worried from a conditioning standpoint what condition Josh Jacobs is in once he does, or if he does report eventually at training camp. But you said it from a perspective of panic button. Could he be traded? Is he going to be a distraction? We're far away from that. I think the focus now, as you said, is the draft. And after the draft, based on what happens, I think they'll focus on some of the players that they do have, the veterans, that they have to work out some contract situations, some restructures, an extension with Jacobs. I think that's going to be the top of the priority. But again, after the draft, because there's just so much time. I think they understand how important he is to that offense.
Yeah, no, and that's true. But Mo, you also, when you talked about it on the show last time, but then when we got off the show, you texted me a story and talking about the running back market. Run that through to everybody so they understand, because it doesn't matter how good Josh Jacobs is. And I used the stock market as an example last time. But listen, you can have a really good player, but if the market for that player is in a range, you're not going to go outside it, because then you set the market. And I don't see Dave Ziegler having any desire to set the market on running backs in the NFL.
It goes back to the conversation we had about Devin White and acquiring him, and Buda Baker that we had over the past show, is that it's not as easy as saying he's a good player, so we're going to give him a long-term contract. You have to look at the market value. And to be honest with you, safety, inside linebacker, and running back are at the bottom of the total pool when it comes to premiums at the position. So with the running back position, I did text you after the show, Dalvin Cook, the Vikings there were rumors that the Vikings could either cut or trade him before or after the draft. And people say, well, Dalvin Cook is a multi-time Pro Bowler, big part of that offense. How could they just let him go like that? And to your point, it's about the market value. The running back market is probably the most depleted market out there among the positions right now. I just said it. Dalvin Cook could be traded or released. There are situations where people are saying maybe Joe Mixon is replacing Cincinnati. Derrick Henry, there are rumors around him. Could he be traded? And he's been so important to that Titans offense. So and Austin Eckler with the Chargers, he, as I said last show, the Chargers cut off extension talks with Austin Eckler. So now he's faced with playing out his contract and betting on himself. He doesn't have a choice unless he gets a trade partner to acquire him and want to pay him a new deal. So the top running backs just aren't getting paid. So I don't expect Josh Jacobs, even if the Raiders do give him an extension, I don't expect him to top the market either.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's why, listen, to the fans out there, don't be worried about it. I mean, he will sign the tender, right, eventually, unless they give him a new contract. Why would you sign a contract when you're trying to get a new one? I mean, it doesn't make sense. And to the point we made last show, Mo, there's no hurry. You have to the middle of July.
Right. The only issue here is, and I said this on the last show, is if he looks around at the Raiders roster and he feels like the Raiders aren't going to compete or be competitive, he may say, look, if you want me to play for a team that's only going to get 5 to 6 wins, in my opinion, you're going to have to give me an extension to play for a team like that. Now, if he feels like this team could compete, win 9 games, and could potentially compete for a playoff spot, I think he'll play under the type because that's what he said during Super Bowl week. But again, it all matters of where he thinks the team is headed. Because again, if you're going to take the pounding, if you're going to take all that punishment, that physical punishment, you want to be rewarded for that, especially on a bad football team.
Yeah, no question about it. It'll be interesting. And I don't think it's a distraction for the team. You know, you have new players there. You have Garoppolo. You have guys there that are in the building in Henderson on Raiders Way, doing what they need to do to kind of get into the system again and to familiarize themselves with some of their teammates, the facility, just getting back into the rhythm here in the spring before they get some time off before camp in the summertime.
And one quick thing I'll say is that the Raiders also still have a safety net. I know a lot of people complain that Zamir White was a wasted pick last year because he barely played because Josh Jacobs went off. But I think having Zamir White gives the Raiders a little bit of leverage with Josh Jacobs saying, well, we have Zamir White here. We know he hasn't done much, but we're not going to pony up big bucks for a running back when we drafted a guy in the 4th round. I also drafted Brown in the 7th. So they have some guys. They're unproven, but they can say, look, if Josh Jacobs walks away or if he holds in or holds out, we have guys that we can develop behind him.
Yep, absolutely. All right, well, there you go. That's the Josh Jacobs story for the day. And some thoughts on the draft. I'm serious, though, Mo. I cannot wait for Thursday because then all this conjecture is over, and then we can actually get to analyzing guys who will most likely be on the Raiders roster. We will have some answers. We can start to at least somewhat pass some judgment on the front office, right? We don't really know what these guys will be until next February, by the way. But by the way, we can at least start to say, okay, what did they do at number 1? Did they move around in the draft? What did they do with their picks? The deep picks, 3rd, 4th, 5th round, what did they do there? Did they find value? Is this guy one of those hidden gems? We're going to have a lot more to talk about in about a week and a half than we do now. And I'm all for that because all the mock drafts, all this BS about the quarterbacks, I'm just going to be glad it's over.
Same here. I know this is I've said this on a Bleacher Report live show. This is a true BPA draft for the Raiders. I don't think they go quarterback at 7, but they can pretty much take the best player available at any position. Although I wouldn't like an offensive lineman there. As Baldy said, I think for Peter Skoronski, 7 is too high. But I will say there are 2 objectives the Raiders must check off the box. They need elite cornerback and they need a linebacker. Regardless of what happens on the draft next week, those 2 positions they need to address and with players who can contribute right away. Yep,
there you go. All right, we're going to step aside for our final break. When we come back, it's your time. Yes, your time. It is the Raider Nation Mailbag, which we love to get to this time of the week. We're going to answer your questions and have some fun, too, when we come back here on Silver and Black Today. You're with Mo and Scott. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. If you could only hear us in the breaks, you'd have a lot of fun. This is Silver and Black Today, the home stretch. Mo Moten, Scott Gulbransen, your sage guides taking you through the latest news, views, and information about your Las Vegas Raiders. Again, a big thank you to Brian Baldinger for joining us, of course, NFL Network. Also part of the family here at Audacy. Make sure you listen to the draft show. The Audacy Live Draft Show will be on Thursday night at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. He's doing it with Jason LaCanfora. I will join them live. We're going to be competing with Mo, who's going to be on the Bleacher Report show. Mo, that's at the same time, right? How you're going to come on and talk about the Raiders pick on that as well?
Basically, it's a watch show. I'm going to kick it off at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific when the draft kicks off. So I'll be talking through pick 7 when the Raiders are on the clock. So if the Raiders make a move or if there's something that impacts the Raiders, I'll be able to talk about it live on air, and you can join me and we can, have a sip of something and see what happens.
A sip of something and a lick of some mint chip ice cream, baby.
No, not happening.
To go with your warm potato salad. We were talking on Twitter on Tuesday. Was it? Yeah, Tuesday. I can lose track of my days. About warm potato salad. My former boss, my former editor at the Las Vegas Review-Journal, Kurt Kern, was giving me crap. He loves to give me crap because I still call him boss. He was one of my first bosses in the business, and so we still do it. And everybody was ganging up on me on the warm potato salad. But there was one guy who said to put it on top of a hot dog.
I think I saw that. I wasn't sure if I read that correctly. I was like,
now,
is that the allergy meds acting up? Did he say put it on the hot dog? I don't know. I was curious.
But then I thought about it and I'm like, okay, if it's warm and it's potatoes, putting it on a hot dog. Now, I'm originally from Chicago back in the day where we don't put ketchup or any of that crap stuff. And you're from New York. It's a mustard town. So putting a warm potato salad on a hot dog, I might have to try it, Mo. I might have to try it.
Hey, I'm up for trying it, especially if it's warm. Not cold.
There you go. Speaking of warm, our listeners, yes, they're warm. They're fired up to send us questions, as they always are, Mo. And the first question for you is about your Brooklyn Nets hat. No, I'm just kidding. That's an inside joke for long-time listeners. Okay, so this one comes from Twitter at Real Super Sean, SEAN. Traditional spelling of Sean.
Shout out to Real Super Sean. I've known him for years.
Yes.
Much respect to him. He's been supporting my work for a long time. Super Sean, I know you sent the DM. I wasn't able to answer that DM, so maybe this question has to do with that DM that you sent.
He sent me a DM too, and I told him because it was a question, and it wasn't necessarily for the show, but I told him we would answer it on the show because we liked it, and I figured maybe he sent it to you. He did say he's known you so long that back then you had dreadlocks down to your knees. Is that right? Is that you didn't have dreadlocks?
I don't think that's too accurate, but we'll ride with that.
Okay, I thought it would be fun. All right, so here's what Sean asked. He says, "Would you guys be cool coming away with Forbes and Cansey and gaining picks to get the highest rated tight end and linebacker?" That's from Super Sean. So Forbes, of course, and Cansey. Cansey's going to go. I think Cansey's one of the top 10, 12 players in the draft. Don't you, Mo?
I wouldn't say top 10, 12, but I would say top 20 just for context purposes. And the Bleacher Report live draft that I had on Tuesday, I was able to get Cansey for the Bills at 27, and I was shocked he was still there. Wow. I actually think Cansey is the second best defensive tackle in this draft behind Jalen Carter. I know a lot of people like Brian Breesy. I would stay away from Breesy simply because, again, the injury history scares me. Maybe he played out of position at Clemson, taking on less double teams and just being a 3-technique defensive tackle may help him. But I like Cansey out of Pittsburgh. I don't think he's Aaron Donald because a lot of people like to push that Aaron Donald comparison because they were both from Pitt. But I think he could be very effective and very disruptive in the middle of a defense if the Raiders miss out or pass on a Jalen Carter. I think Cansey could be that guy. So to answer Super Sean's question, I would definitely take Cansey, but I'm not taking him at 7. I'm probably moving down to get him. Emmanuel Forbes is a guy that I like. It's just that what scares me is he is super thin.
Yeah, he's very
when thin. I say Emmanuel Forbes, he is 166 pounds, I believe. And I watched the draft show, and I believe it was Greg Cosell saying that we've never seen a cornerback at 166 pounds excel on this level. Right. So you're looking at an outlier. Now, he was a ball hawk at Mississippi State. I believe he had 14 interceptions. So that's what you're looking at when you get an Emmanuel Forbes, a guy who forced turnovers, which the Raiders do need badly. But you have to look at his size and think, man, he is awfully thin at 166 pounds. Now, maybe he can gain some weight and get up to 180, and I would be more okay with it. But he would have to come in, and the first thing we're doing is giving him hot dogs with potato salad on it. Because he's got to.
What happens is our producer David Stepanian takes him to the Vegas buffets and just says, "Dude, see the line? Just go get 2 items from every line and just keep eating." right? I mean, he's got to bulk up, and the weight room too, obviously an NFL weight room.
Yeah.
Not that they don't do great in college, but it's just a whole different regimen in the NFL when you don't have school to worry about, and that's your job. So it'll be interesting. But I like Forbes a lot. But when you look at, think of Porter, you think of Gonzalez, you think, of course, of Witherspoon. All of those guys to me are better prospects. And so, Sean, I would go with any of those guys. Especially, I mean, you're talking about 7. It's got to be Witherspoon, maybe Porter, maybe Gonzalez, depending on how the draft lines up. But those 3 guys in that order, or excuse me, any of those 3 guys at 7 to me makes sense. I know we're both big Witherspoon fans, more so if he's there at 7. If he wasn't there at 7 for some reason, which might be the case with Detroit, then definitely Porter. I like Porter 2nd, and I like Gonzalez 3rd, even though Gonzalez is getting all the hype.
Here's how I'll break it down for Sean. At 7, Witherspoon, for cornerback specifically, at 7, Witherspoon is my top guy. If Witherspoon is not there because the Detroit Lions swipe him as they did today in my mock draft, then I'm taking Christian Gonzalez. I think he's also worth the 7. So I think if he's a Pro Bowl level cornerback, you get that at 7. But if the Raiders trade down, I actually like Joey Porter Jr. as a prospect more than Christian Gonzalez, but I'm not taking Joey Porter Jr. at 7. Again, as I said earlier in the show, I would trade if the Raiders trade down into the 11th spot because the Titans want to move up for a quarterback who's available at 7. Then I take Joey Porter Jr. there. But at 7, it's Witherspoon, Gonzalez. Trade down, it's Joey Porter Jr. But if the Raiders get a Jalen Carter or address another position in the first round, and they have to get they want to get a cornerback in the second round, Emmanuel Forbes, Keely Ringo will come into the effect. Cam Smith, who I really like. Those are the tier 2 guys in my opinion. But as you said, tier 1, Witherspoon, Gonzalez, and Joey Porter Jr.
Absolutely. All right. At Real Super Sean on Twitter. Thanks for the question. We certainly appreciate it.
Big thanks.
Now we go to our traditional and weekly email from our great listener and viewer, Gary Harkenreader. Gary writes in, he says, with all the draft banner and the smoke screens, my question to you and Midtown Mo, right?
It's Midtown Mo.
Right? It's got to be Midtown Mo. All right. We got to play the theme. He referenced your title. We have to. And you've been Midtown Mo like 3 times in the last 2 days or whatever it is. All right. There we go. Regarding the defense, is Patrick Graham going to be the one making the choice, the draft choice, basically? Example, on draft day, the Raiders are on the clock. Ziegler turns to Graham and says, we can pick A, B, or C. Which one do you want? Thanks, Gary. Gary, I don't think that's how it works. I think the way it works in most NFL front offices is, the defensive coordinator, the head coach have input. They have their guys. They've already ranked their guys, okay? And so when players come off the board, they pull the player off and whoever's left, and then they get to that point, I'm sure Dave Ziegler will say, okay, guys, our top 2 guys are gone. We're down to 3 and 4. You had them rated close together. Let's talk real quick about which one we like better. And then Dave Ziegler makes a choice. I think it's a conversation. He doesn't make the pick, but he certainly has influence.
Right. You want your defensive coordinator to be involved because at the end of the day, he is calling the plays with these guys. So he has to be involved in that conversation. But I also think that you also lean on your scout team to know what works for your defense. So I think what will happen, just to simplify this, let's say Scott is GM Dave Ziegler and I am Patrick Graham because Scott's white, I'm black. But anyway, let's say he has 5 guys, right, that he's scouted.
How do you know I don't identify as black? Come on.
Let's say GM Dave Ziegler Gulbransen has 5 guys that says, look, these 5 guys fit your scheme. These are the top 5 guys out there. And then I say as Patrick Graham, okay, I like these 5 guys. So if there are 3 guys that we both like, then those are the 3 guys that we focus on, and maybe we throw out the other 2. But as you said, it's a collaborative approach where you're trying to find some common ground between your scouting team and what you feel you need on the field. But you would hope that, again, it's a collaborative effort and not something that we saw with John Gruden in the Reggie McKenzie years where you have multiple draft boards and guys disagreeing. Hopefully, as Mark Davis said, when he hired Dave Ziegler and Josh McDaniels, that there's some synergy between head coach, GM, and some of the assistants, Champ Kelly and the guys and the coordinators, because you want that synergy in the draft. And you don't want 5 different opinions and then you get on the clock and you don't know what you're doing. I think it'll be a collaborative effort. I think they come together and find common ground some of those prospects, as you said.
Absolutely. All right, Gary, as always, my friend, we appreciate you and we appreciate your questions. Okay. And by the way, Gary, thank you for not making it 16 paragraphs. I appreciate that. Very good. We read
Keep
them all.
writing, Gary. Keep
Yes,
writing, Gary.
keep writing.
Yes.
We're gonna we're gonna do a book by Gary called My Questions to Midtown Mo. All right. Okay, our next one. This is a great one because this has to do with potato salad, but you won't understand it until the end. All right, it says, "Hey guys, last time you mentioned Raider Nation is not really excited about the draft. I think the reason is my opinion is obvious. No clear understanding of the big picture of where this team is heading to. Coming from over 20 years of disappointments with a new front office, including the non-existent experience and success, we do not know what to rely on. I can see all I can see is the top guys being drafted by us, but what's the strategy for this offseason, including free agency? I would really appreciate it if you could discuss this as a puzzle in total. Is it a rebuild? Yes, no, partly. I believe that Ziggy, I love that. He called him Ziggy. Ziggy and Josh expected way more substance in this roster coming to Las Vegas, and that's why we got Adams and Jones. Or do these hirings still make sense in your opinion? Thanks from Raider Nation all the way over in Germany.
Nice.
Yes, Germany, where warm potato salad started, by the way. That's why I looped those together. All right. So there's Daniel in Germany. Dan, listen, the show, like Raider Nation, is international. We get questions from all over the world. It's really cool. And Daniel, we appreciate you sending in your first question. So, Mother, there's a couple things to unwrap there that we've talked about on the show a lot, which is, number one, I'm going to start at the end, not with the potato salad, but with did they know the roster? We talked about this right at the end of the season and as we started to go into free agency, right? Which is, no, I don't think Dave Ziegler and Josh McDaniels had an idea of what the roster was until the season got a third of the way in, and then they made choices. They understood, hey, this might not be the quarterback we need. Hey, this talent level is not what we expected or what it was on paper, which is why when we first got here, we said, hey, this isn't a rebuild. No, we have a roster. We think we can compete quickly. They were wrong. That does not make them liars. What it meant was when they got in and they saw the product on the field, they said, wait a minute, we don't have all the right pieces. Am I summarizing that correctly, Mo?
Yeah, there's a big difference between being a liar and just being flat out wrong about what you have. I think it's the latter for the Raiders. I think Dave Ziegler and Josh McDaniels thought, okay, we have a veteran quarterback with a lot of experience. We have some pieces on the offensive line. We have some pieces on the defense. Denzel Perryman was coming off of his first Pro Bowl year as middle linebacker. So I feel like the Raiders came in, Josh McDaniels and Dave Ziegler specifically came in and said, we can compete right away. Why else would you acquire Devontae Adams to pair with a Derek Carr? Why else would you sign Chandler Jones to a big deal? So they definitely thought that they could compete in year one, and it turns out they were wrong, and they weren't able to compete with the roster they had. Derek Carr wasn't the right quarterback for them. Chandler Jones now looks old. Devontae Adams was fine, of course, but in totality, it just wasn't enough to compete in the AFC West, compete in the AFC period, where Raiders only win 6 games. So now you have to pivot and change your plans. And yes, it is a rebuild. You got rid of your quarterback, got a new quarterback. We've said it many times on this show. They need starters on every level of the defense, so they have to revamp their defense. And they added a wide receiver. Now, I know they were pretty good at wide receiver already with Adams and Renfro, but they added Jacoby Myers at $11 million a year. They traded Darren Waller, who's one of their top playmakers. This is definitely a rebuild and a pivot from their original plan, which was to compete in the AFC.
Yeah, no question. And then if we get into the other part of the question about not being excited about the draft, totally understand. We've actually said that, right? As we understand the skepticism because it's been just, dumpster fire after dumpster fire for the most part. There's been a couple of good things here and there, and I certainly understand that. And I think that the idea, Mo, that they haven't communicated well a vision. Now, I understand this, and I think there's a good point to it, but at the same time, I don't know how much fans want. They're not going to say, hey, here's a 40-page guide on how we're going to build this team into a winner. And I'm not trying to make fun of anybody. It's not meant to be a smart-ass remark. I'm just saying that they're going to paint a vision. Hey, we're going to build a winner, right? Here's what we're going to do. And I think they've already said it, actually. When you look at it, Daniel, is they've said, listen, we need to build through the draft. They've said that numerous times over this offseason. So I think they're giving you the vision is it's going to be a little while. It's going to be a little while. We got to build to the draft. We'll fill in with some free agents when we can, but we need to get better at every position. And to do that, we can't just go out and spend money or we'll shoot the whole thing. We need to build with young guys in skill positions, develop them, and keep them around.
Even if you don't want to filter through all these press conferences to piece together and find out what's the direction of this football team, I would tell fans who are confused just to look at how the Raiders have approached the offseason. It tells you everything about at least their short-term plans.
You've said this. You've said this the entire offseason.
Right, and I've said this for many weeks. Look at what they've done. They get rid of Derek Carr, replace it with Jimmy Garoppolo, who has some injury issues, and that's why I don't think he's a long-term answer. They signed a bunch of the guys on the defensive side of the ball to short-term or modest deals.
Mm-hmm.
Josh Jacobs is still waiting for a new contract. What this tells you is that it's a rebuild offseason, and they're trying to build from the draft. They have 12 picks. They didn't trade away picks for players. They got rid of Darren Waller for a pick, and they have 12. So what that tells you is that they're putting a lot of their eggs into this draft to rebuild this roster. So remember, let's just keep in mind that there's $30 million tied up into players who are not on this roster from the previous regime and then for letting go Derek Carr. So if you put that all together and you do the detective work, it tells you that it's a rebuild year, and they're trying to do it with young guys from the draft and cheap guys off of cheap contracts and free agency.
Yep, there you go. Daniel in Germany, thank you so much. Send pretzels and beer. We appreciate that. Okay, now our last question we'll get to really quick, and this is wild because it comes from somebody I do not know in my hometown of Carlsbad, California, which is North San Diego County. It says, Mo and Scott, if the Raiders take a quarterback, mark my words, they will be set back for 8 years. I don't believe any of the top quarterbacks, including Richardson, are going to be NFL starters 6 years from now. We need to focus on defense, all of it, and offensive line. Am I crazy on this? Thanks. Daryl in Carlsbad, California. Go Lancers, by the way. That's my high school. And we appreciate you writing in. So, Mo, I think we said this in the first segment with Baldy, but also in the second segment when we recapped, which is I fully believe them not to go up and get a quarterback or to take a quarterback at 7, i.e. Will Levis or whoever's left. I anticipate that they're going to go all defense. An offensive lineman, Baldy, you mentioned you followed up with him on what he printed, I think, or posted on Tuesday about offensive linemen jumping ahead of wide receivers in the first round and in the second round. And so we could see the Raiders go defense and an offensive lineman. That would not surprise me. I still think they'll go defense, but I don't think they're going to do a quarterback. I think they'll do a quarterback later on a flyer to bring a young guy in and see how he does with the 2 veterans that are going to be in camp already. But outside of that, I don't expect quarterback play here.
I don't expect quarterback unless the Texans trade out of the second pick and CJ Stroud is available. I'm not saying I expect the Raiders to draft up, but I would think that they're going to make a phone call to see what is the price moving up, because that's what it boils down to is what is it going to take to move up? And if the price is high, I could see the Raiders being satisfied with just sticking at 7 and taking the best defensive player available, which is fine. But I want to get to the emailers' 8-year time frame. 8 years is a long time.
It's a long time.
If the Raiders were to take a quarterback at 7 or trade up for one and they miss, I think the thing to remember is picking the quarterback that whiffs will set you back in the short term, but the bigger problem is when you pick a quarterback and try to make it work knowing that he's not the guy, sticking with a bad decision sets you back 8 years. Making a bad decision doesn't set you back 8 years because you can whiff at the quarterback position and draft another guy a year after. We saw the Cardinals do it.
But look at the Jets. Like that quarterback situation didn't work out. I know they haven't gotten Aaron Rodgers yet, and that's going to force their hand. And so in some ways, having to take the Aaron Rodgers contract could set them back, although they're ready to win. So there's ways past it. I don't think it's the old days where you get stuck with a guy and you're done. Because to your point, you get them on a rookie contract, and you're talking about, you have that 4 years, but still, if it doesn't work out, and in this case, you already have a veteran there who, by the way, has an NFC championship ring. Remember that. I know he gets injured a lot and all that jazz, but the guy's won. I know you can say the team around him was great, all that stuff. The fact is he's won. So it's not like it's going to be your only hope. And then if you miss on the quarterback, then you can, and you're not very good in your rebuild mode, you might be in a position next year to trade up and get one again. So again, this is a situation where I don't think it sets you back as far as you think. Maybe it sets you back a year or two, depending on your situation. But other than that, it's not to. And this Raiders team, I think, is 2 years, probably 3 away from being a serious playoff team. And I say serious, meaning they could go deeper in the playoffs. I think after a year of rebuild, they could actually be in a position to make the playoffs. So I think you have to keep that in mind. I get what you're stressing though, Daryl, which is I don't want them to take a quarterback. So I get that.
So I understand that, and I think that's the fright of a lot of fans is that what if we take a quarterback and he turns out to be a bust? We're going to be a bum team for the next 5 to 10 years. Yeah. And as I said, it's one thing to make a bad decision. It will set you back. It could set you back 1 or 2 years. It's another thing to stick with that bad decision too long. And that's when you get to, okay, we're going to be bad for 8 years if you stick with a guy who should have been gone a year, 2, 3 years prior. So don't be afraid. I would say if the Raiders do draft a quarterback, I wouldn't be afraid of that pick simply because that guy is not going to be expected to play right away because as you said, they have Jimmy Garoppolo there, so there's time to develop that guy, whoever he is, if they do draft someone. But I don't think it'll set you back 10 years if you're not going to be stubborn about it.
Agreed. All right. There you go. You got through all the mail, man. Okay, now we'll take a breath and we'll recap for next week. So next week, draft week. On Tuesday's show, we're going to have on Matt Holder from Bleacher Report. Matt's going to bring us through some more draft. We're going to do our final look in on the draft before Thursday night and make sure that you guys have the latest and we'll get his opinion. He's also obviously a Raider fan, so we'll have a sense for what he does there. Then on Thursday, we won't have a regular show on Thursday because of the draft itself. Again, I'll be on with Brian Baldinger and Jason LaCanfora when the Raiders pick in the first round on the Audacy 2023 Audacy NFL Draft Show, which you can catch on the Audacy app or on your local Audacy station. You can also check it out live on the Audacy Sports YouTube page and as well as on Twitch. Mo will be live on the Bleacher Report Draft Show covering there too. So you can catch both spots. We won't be on a show here at Silverback today, but we will both be on draft. And then we will work out the schedule and do our post-draft recap with you probably that next week. So next week we'll drop the one show and then maybe a second show late in the week if we can get to it. If not, we'll get back to you early that next week. But Mo, I'm looking forward to getting Matt on. He's been so knee deep, I should say neck deep in draft stuff. It's going to be fun to talk to him.
Absolutely. And just a quick shout out to Gary Harkery. We didn't get his question about undrafted free agents who the Raiders may look at. We'll get to that with Matt since he's been, as you said, neck deep in prospects. We'll talk to him about that and get back to Gary. So shout out to Gary. We didn't forget you. But as you said, just a lot going on next week with the draft coming up. You're going to be on the show. I'm going to be doing a show. We're going to have Matt on. Raider fans are going to finally get to see their new crop of rookies. Again, I've said this before. I think the Raiders are going to bring in at least 10 guys. I don't think they're going to make 12 picks because they're going to be maneuvering up and down, trading picks to move up for certain guys. I think we're going to see 10 new Raiders, and at least 8 of them are going to have a chance to make the final roster.
There you go. You heard it from Mostradamus, his alter ego, not Midtown Mo, but Mostradamus.
3 personalities.
That's right. You got you. I love it. But we'll be back with you next week at some point, so we'll figure that all out. But we appreciate you guys being with us. Do us a favor. But first I got to say goodbye to my friend Mo. Mo, have a great week. We will talk to you on Tuesday with Matt.
Yeah, I'm going to try to get some sleep before this upcoming week because I'm going to be...
Yeah, we're all sleeping in this weekend. All right, Mo, I'll talk to you later. Okay, and don't forget, subscribe to the show. If you don't already subscribe to the show, do so wherever you get your audio. Subscribe, put on the auto download so you never miss a show, especially Tuesday, Thursdays when we go live, when the show goes live. That means when you wake up in the morning, boom, it's there for your commute. You got to love it. So make sure you do that as well. Make sure you also subscribe on YouTube, hit the notifications bell. And thank you to our listeners on the Bet in Las Vegas for being with us. We certainly appreciate you listening on the radio in Las Vegas, Nevada, Battle Born. For our producer, David Stepanian, for Mo Moten, my co-host, I am Scott Gulbransen. Thank you so much for being with us. We will talk to you next week, Raider Nation. Enjoy the weekend. Take care.